The Philadelphia Eagles reminded everybody that they are the most complete team in football. Saquon Barkley's first touch in the NFC Championship game went yard as he had a touchdown run of 60 yards, and that set the tone against the Washington Commanders. And this was all part of a 55-23 rout of the Washington Commanders. The superstar running back had 3 rushing touchdowns on the day, and his final touchdown was essentially the clincher as he performed the Steph Curry night-night routine and put the Commanders out of their misery. The Eagles just showed that they have another gear compared to the Washington Commanders. They wore down the Commanders' suspect run defense and continued to beat them like a drum, and it got so desperate that the Commanders deployed different tactics to even stop the Eagles' patented tush push or brotherly shove. Linebacker Frankie Luo, who was great at timing the snap count and even busted through the line for a couple of negative plays early on in the first half, but in the fourth quarter when they needed to find a way to get a stop, he resulted to hopping over the offensive line to try and stop the tush push and failed twice, and it got so bad to the point where the Commanders were warned by the referees that if they were to continue the shenanigans, Eagles being awarded a touchdown by the referees. In 3 games, Saquon Barkley torched the Washington Commanders for 414 yards as the Eagles as a team went over the 200-yard mark in each game. And we know that Saquon Barkley is the engine to this Eagles offense. He's torn up against the LA Rams, the Washington Commanders, the Green Bay Packers, and that is all part of this Eagles run to the Super Bowl. As the Philadelphia Eagles as a whole, they put up 55 points against the Washington Commanders. That is the highest ever point total for any team in a conference championship game. So I mentioned that this was a running display. They actually rushed for 7 total touchdowns, including 3 from Saquon Barkley, 3 from Jalen Hurts, but also 1 from backup running back Will Shipley. But let's give a shout out to Jalen Hurts. Many dubbed Jaden Daniels as the best QB of the NFC, and I'm sorry, who had 2 Super Bowl appearances by now? Jalen Hurts. Apparently Jalen Hurts can't throw. Well, he threw beautiful go balls to AJ Brown, who was quiet much of this postseason and routinely found Dallas Goedert when the Eagles needed a play. Jalen also connected with AJ Brown for a pivotal touchdown just before halftime to create a gap that was basically insurmountable for the Commanders to respond from. With this win against the Commanders on Championship Sunday, Jalen Hurts becomes the first quarterback in over 30 years to lose his first Super Bowl appearance and return to the big game. This hasn't been done since Jim Kelly did so in the early 90s, and there are a lot of quarterbacks that have tried since and have failed to make a Super Bowl appearance. 19 quarterbacks to be exact, and several of those are big names like Donovan McNabb, MVP Rich Gannon, Joe Burrow, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton. All those names, they were having great seasons and they've had honestly pretty good careers, but they have failed to make the big dance since. But Jalen Hurts finally puts a stop to that and returns to the Super Bowl for the first time since 2022. The passing game has been a topic throughout the entire week, and it adds injury to insult when the quarterback is actually injured himself. He sustained a knee injury in that divisional round win against the LA Rams and looked very hobbled for the rest of the game. Thankfully, Saquon Barkley and the defense picked up the slack and they were able to get by the Rams just barely. They needed a big-time performance from Jalen Hurts, and boy did he deliver. Jaden Daniels has had a historic rookie season, but remember that Jalen Hurts is a phenomenal quarterback, and in this game, when they really needed him, he delivered. Like I said earlier, he found AJ Brown on a beautiful go route to set up another Eagles touchdown. And this was going up against Marshon Lattimore, who has a lot of physical battles with AJ Brown. But like I've been saying, though, Marshon Lattimore is washed at this point. I mean, he's basically just a guy that talks and gets into fights and draws penalties. Well, Clearly, A.J. Brown has his number because he torched Lattimore time in and timeout. Jalen led 8 touchdown drives, including a perfect 7 for 7 in the red zone. And him being a signal caller, I mean, he audibled to that touchdown run to kick things off. He saw a bad look in defense when probably they dialed up a pass play, audibled out, and gave a simple pitch out to Saquon Barkley, who simply did the rest behind that mammoth offensive line. He was in total command of this offense from start to finish. I mean, he had a beautiful game where he had 4 total touchdowns, 3 on the ground, 1 in the air to A.J. Brown, like I mentioned, and simply just made better plays that he didn't do against the LA Rams. He didn't hold on to the ball and take a bunch of sacks. And whenever they needed a play, Jalen Hurts did it. He scrambled around and he looked healthy. I mean, the 2 tush push touchdowns, sure, but the 9-yard scramble touchdown where it was a QB draw, and he had another one that was 17 yards out, which was another QB power, similar to the divisional round 44-yard touchdown run, and just looks so fast, elusive. And if he is healthy, I mean, that is just another dimension in this pick your poison type of offense. Yes, Saquon is the engine, but remember, they have many pass catchers like Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and behind this offensive line, the options are endless for the Philadelphia Eagles offense. Jalen Hurts is a proven winner in the NFL. He's beaten every top AFC quarterback in the last 2 years. He beat Patrick Mahomes, he's beaten Josh Allen, he's beaten Joe Burrow, and then later this year he also beat Lamar Jackson, the presumptive MVP. And against Jaden Daniels, the hotshot quarterback, the guy that's taken this league by storm, well, he outperformed him head-to-head in 2 out of 3 matchups. And like I've been saying, that second matchup when Jalen got knocked out of the game due to a concussion, well, again, I put that Commanders win as an asterisk. I mean, there was so many factors that went into that win, but when Jalen is healthy from start to finish, the Eagles haven't lost since their week 5 bye week. And yes, it's not the typical way that you play quarterback. It's not sit back in the pocket, make a quick read, get the ball out. He scrambles, he makes plays with his legs, he does things unorthodox, and he doesn't care about his stats. He's been straight up 100 about that from each press conference. All he cares about is winning. Dates back to his days in Alabama with the Oklahoma Sooners, and same thing in the NFL. All he cares about winning, and he's here to stay, and honestly has been the best quarterback in Eagles franchise history. He's the first quarterback to lead his team to multiple Super Bowls, and that's better than any Eagles quarterback. They've had Jaworski, McNabb, Vic, Nick Foles, who's won it but hasn't been consistent enough. They have Carson Wentz, Randall Cunningham. There have been so many good quarterbacks that played for the Philadelphia Eagles, but Jalen Hurts stands alone as the best in franchise history. He's always done what's asked of him. It's not pretty, and like I said, it's not typical, but it's time to give respect to Jalen Hurts. He's not just the best quarterback in franchise history, or not even just his own division. He's the best quarterback in the NFC. The Eagles' defense has been super hot in this postseason. They have forced 10 turnovers in 3 games, including 4 against the Washington Commanders in the NFC Championship game. After a long drive when they had a lot of 4th down conversions, many defenses maybe get tired, they get frustrated. I mean, they were out there for 17, 18 plays to start the quarter, but they found a way to tighten up inside their own territory and force a Commanders field goal. There was a pretty interesting graphic that showed up in the championship game where after each team had an offensive possession, the Commanders ran off 17 plays or so and only had 3 points to result for it, but the Eagles simply just ran 1 play and had 7 points. That's the real difference when you have Saquon Barkley as a home run hitter and also a strong, stout defense like the Eagles have, with Vic Fangio leading the way. When the Commanders took the field on the next possession after the long Saquon Barkley run, they had a great punch out on Diami Brown, who they immediately made them pay. I mean, the 4 turnovers that the Eagles had, the Eagles offense made them pay for 28 points, and that's the real difference behind a 55-23 victory. I mean, the margin of difference in the points with buoyed by turnovers, that's huge. And that's, again, the whole theme of this postseason. If you turn over the ball, you lose. And if you don't, and you play clean offense, well, you have a good chance of winning that game. The next turnover came on the kickoff when the Eagles just scored to go up 20-12, and after they forced a fumble recovery by Will Shipley, the Eagles cashed in again and went up 27-12 just before halftime. And the D-line, I mean, they had answers for the running attack. I mean, Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler had nothing to give on a very quiet night from the rushing offense for the Washington Commanders. And first team All-Pro Zach Bond just made the play when the Eagles needed to. When the Commanders were driving late in the third quarter, they had an opportunity to make it a one-possession game. They've been trailing throughout this entire ball game, but who knows, a touchdown or a field goal even makes it a one-possession game heading into the fourth quarter, and then who knows what happens after that. But a punch out by Zach Bond and a fumble recovery leads to the Eagles getting another touchdown to essentially ice the game. The final turnover was an interception thrown by Jalen Daniels, and many will say that he was making a play when they were acting out of desperation, sure, but throwing it into double coverage, and I like a guy taking his chances with his guy like Terry McLaurin. But Quinion Mitchell has owned Terry McLaurin throughout the entirety of the season. I think in the second matchup, sure, he got the best of Quinion Mitchell for that one rep, but if you look at the most of the reps, Quinion Mitchell has shut down Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin had his one touchdown against Darius Slay in this championship game, but against Quinion Mitchell, Terry McLaurin was a non-factor, and Quinion Mitchell intercepted the ball, and that was icing on the cake. 4 turnovers on the day, Quinion Mitchell's second interception. And if you're looking at this young defense that Howie Roseman has built in the last couple of years, it's been great. I mean, you have not just Jalen Carter, who is the crown jewel of the 2023 draft. You have Jalix Hunt, Moro Ojomo, both had sacks of the divisional round. You have Nolan Smith, who leads the postseason in sacks. He had another one on a pivotal fourth down stop in the fourth quarter on Jalen Daniels. This is all done, and if you add that in with Vic Fangio's tutelage, and if you think about the 2024 draft, you have Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and these are all just excellent picks by Howie Roseman, and then under the tutelage of Vic Fangio, I mean, this defense has been so good, and this is how the #1 defense in the NFL was built. It's not just built in a single day. It's an accumulation of good draft picks, great mentorship by a good defensive coordinator, and I mean, they did a great job of mixing in some young talent and some veteran talent into corralling one of the league's hottest quarterbacks in Jalen Daniels. Now, I want to give credit to Nick Sirianni. After starting 2-2, many fans were yelling for his firing, to take him off the team entirely, and this is coming on the hinges of that epic collapse in 2023. They started off 10-1 and went 11-6 and flamed out in the wild card round. A lot went wrong, and credit to Nick Sirianni for retooling his staff. He fired Sean Desai, Matt Patricia, and Brian Johnson, and brought in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. And it was a slow start. It was an ugly 4 games, but after they got healthy and after they had some time with the bye week, I mean, it's been night and day. They have not lost a game that Jalen Hurts has started and finished, and they have only lost one since the bye week. Nick Sirianni has molded himself into the perfect CEO type of coach. He stays out of the way. He's made some adjustments to what he does and how he manages a given game. And that's really how the Eagles have gone from just a middle-of-the-pack team to an elite team. And Nick Sirianni now becomes the first coach in Eagles franchise history to take a team to multiple Super Bowls. And I really think that it's really important that he coaches physicality. I mean, anytime a player gets up off the ground, he does really well with coaching just to punch the ball out. And that's something that happened where Zach Bond punched the ball out of Austin Eckler's hand in a pivotal sequence in the third quarter. And Nick has had success. I mean, he's unbeaten against Matt LaFleur. He's been unbeaten against Sean McVay, and unbeaten against Dan Campbell. I mean, those are 3 really good head coaches all in the NFC, but he's never lost to either one of them. You know, these Commanders exceeded expectations. They came into this year with an unknown commodity in Jalen Daniels. Is he a runner? Is he a thrower? We just don't know. But to make this kind of leap already in year one in this Dan Quinn, Josh Harris era and make the Commanders not a laughingstock anymore. I mean, under Daniel Snyder, I mean, they were a pathetic franchise, but under new ownership, the changes have been unreal. And there was a funny report leading into the championship game where the former owner Daniel Snyder is livid over the Commanders' recent success. Well, now if you look at it, it's only up from here. I mean, you have Jaden Daniels, who had the best rookie campaign ever. You have a lot of great pieces heading into this offseason. There's nothing but to look forward to for the future. I mean, nobody expected them to have this type of ceiling already. And I think a few things that now they need to improve on is definitely shore up this defense. I mean, the gap between how to corral this Eagles running attack and just their weapons is going to be key in trying to remain competitive in the NFC East. So I think the secondary is pretty solid. They have one with Mikey Sanistril, but definitely need to revamp the secondary. The defensive line is old, and I think Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne unfortunately have been past their prime, and injuries have definitely caught up with this team. But a lot to look forward to. The offensive line looks a lot better, and I think at this point they just need to find out another receiver to pair with Terry McLaurin, because when he is shut down, I mean, sure, Zach Ertz had a phenomenal game, but that's not a winning formula, especially to be the team that has so much firepower like the Philadelphia Eagles. Something else the Commanders need to work on is, as long as Cliff Kingsbury stays, which I hope he does for the sake of Jaden Daniels' development, is simply they need to find a way to keep the turnovers down. In 3 games against the Eagles, they've had 11 turnovers, and that's just not a winning formula. And that's including 3 interceptions from Jaden Daniels. This is the one team that Jaden Daniels has had problems with, especially with turnovers. And as the team as a whole, we've seen a lot of turnovers with the Washington offense. But the goal this offseason is to make the improvements that I mentioned, but is to also make sure that they don't fall into the notorious sophomore slump, just like the Houston Texans did.